Hi, welcome to this video. In this video, we will be showing you how to design a small system that manages an assessment. It helps the instructor or the teacher to manage the creation of an assessment, and then it helps them to update questions in the assessment. It's not going to do beyond this. If you'd love to practice improving the system, you could add other methods that will allow the users or the instructors to do other things to the assessment. We're going to be working with two different files. We'll be working with the test underscore manager.py file. Then we will be working with the assessment.py file. The test underscore manager.py file is going to handle the basic logic that determines or decides which of the actions the instructors would love to carry out. If the instructors would love to create a question, so create a test or an assessment, and if the instructors or the users would love to update a question, add a question. These are the two methods that we're actually going to work on. So first, we're going to write the code for the test manager.py file before we go to the main script. So we're going to, specify a few descriptions. Course assessment management system. All right, so that's what we're going to call this. You can call it any other thing you want. And then we just put a few instructions here. Probably these instructions won't be here. Okay, we won't put these instructions here. So what we're going to do here is this. Import the assessment class from the assessment module. Of course, we have the assessment module already, but we don't have any class in it yet. So we're not going to try to import anything from it. Otherwise, we will get an error. And we can actually, write the import statement from assessment, import assessment, and then just comment out the line so it doesn't run and it doesn't cause any errors. So what we're going to define right now is a function that helps us manage the actions or the tasks that the instructors or the users would love to carry out. So we define a function called exam underscore manager. Okay, so we add a bit of doc string here. This manages the data provided for creating exams. Okay, let's leave it at this. Or assessments. All right, we'll leave it at this. And now we want it to be very interactive. So we're going to define a variable called action. And then here, request the user to, tell us what they would love to do. So we simply are just going to do this and, say create assessment 0. We'll use something that looks a little bit catchy. 0. Add question, remove questions, add question. Add question. That would be 1. Remove question. Let's give that a 2. All right, so whatever other kind of action you'd love to add, you can add and, do any other thing you love. Just to practice and keep yourself up to date. All right, now we're going to begin. The exam manager is going to listen to the action that the user chooses. So we say if action, what's going on here is we want the users to use these numbers to specify the actions they want. So we need to convert whatever they enter inside of the action variable. If in action is equal to 0, then for now, what we're going to do is just print a statement. Print create an assessment, and that's what we're going to have. And this is going to be the pattern: elif int action is equal to 1. Then we print something else. All right, so this is how we're going to monitor what the users want to do. Print adding questions. All right, and finally, elif int action is equal to 2. Then we print removing questions. So we can test run this to see which of the responses we get, to see if we get the right responses. So we call this function exam manager. Okay, so I'm going to say pi test underscore manager dot pi. All right, create assessment 0, add question 1, remove question 2. So if I choose 0, it says creating assessment. I run the script again, choose 1, it says adding questions. I run the script one more time, choose 2, it says removing questions. So basically, this is the logic that helps the application select what to do exactly. So right now, what should happen when when we specify that we want to create a question, the assessment object, is going to take several data to work with. It has to be identified with an instructor or with a lecturer or with a teacher. So there are attributes that it's going to work with. The first is the creator, and the second is the test name, the third is the duration, the fourth is the test code, and the fifth is the password that locks these questions so that we have some level of security here. So we define a variable called creator, and of course input exam creator name. All right, just see how I'm going to duplicate this. All right, we have test name, test underscore name. Then the next is the duration. Next is the test code. And then lastly, we have the password. Okay, good. So these are the bits of data that will be required if a user chooses to create a question or create an assessment. I'm going to delete this line. And then, yes, we're going to do something with this data. The data is going to be fed to the assessment class, which we are yet to create. We're yet to design the assessment class. So this is a system we're creating. This is a system we're designing to help instructors create exams, add questions to the exams. We will have a very limited number of methods here, just 2 methods. And then for the sake of practice, you could add other methods that do other things. So we're going to stop there, and yes, let's see. So if the action value is 1, that's add question. Yes, let's also add the logic for this. If it's to add a question, let's see. We will require the creator name. So I'm just going to copy what we have here. Same. We will also require the test name and the password. So I will copy this, paste it here, then copy this, paste it here. All right, so these are the three bits of data that will be required if the user wanted to add a question. So I'm going to leave the third one out. You could actually work on it. If you want to remove a question, you could actually write the logic for removing a question. So right now, I think we're ready to go to the assessment.py file, where we're going to write the main logic that makes our application work. So here, we're going to be working with the OS and the JSON module that we discussed in the last video. So the first thing we want to do is import OS, JSON, right? And then we're going to dive straight in to define a class, assessment. Okay, I'm going to provide small doc string. This lays the foundation for a basic assessment object. Right. And then we define our init method. So we have to place parameters here that will require the user to provide data when the assessment class is called. So we have creator, test name, duration, test underscore code, then password. All right. Now the number of attributes we're actually going to have will be more than the parameters that have been provided. So the first we have self creator equals creator. We can have self dot test underscore name is equal to test underscore name. Sorry, test underscore name. Self dot duration is equal to duration. Then self dot test underscore code is equal to test underscore code. And finally, self password is equal to password. Yes, we're going to add three other attributes here that they don't rely on the data that the user will provide completely. Of course, this one is going to rely on the data that the user provides. It's actually a preparation. It's actually a data preparation. So it's going to be self.data. We will be storing data in JSON format. So we need to prepare using the Python dictionary. And then the first key name is going to be test underscore name. Of course, we just place the self, the test name in it. Now the second item will be for the test code. And in itself dot test underscore code. And then the third item will be the creator. So we have creator self dot creator. The fourth item will be the duration. So these are key value pairs that help us to easily convert our data into JSON format. Duration. Then we're going to have the password and then the question. So we have password, self.password, and then we have questions, self.questions. Sorry. Okay, for questions, since we're not taking any data from the user, we're going to place an empty list in it. Place an empty list in it. Then we have self.question max. Yes, the maximum number of questions this exam can take is 30. And then self.q underscore mean, the minimum number of questions is 20. You can always change this, and you're getting to see that these two integer data are not relying on what the user is going to supply. So this totally has been taken out of the hands of the user. You could actually modify your program, modify your system to allow the instructor or the teacher to decide the maximum number of questions and the minimum number of questions. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to say self.create underscore assessment. So this is a method that we will be defining very soon. We're going to define this method very soon. Create underscore assessment. Self. I'm just going to say pass for now. All right, so there's a method that we're going to define first. This is the wrong, we shouldn't have any kind of indentation here. Or we should have just a single level of indentation, yes. Okay, def set underscore path. We're going to be working with JSON files, and we want to be able to, create these file names. We want to be able to set these file names, the paths, before anything happens at all. So there's a method that's going to help us do this. We provide docstring set underscore path. Method ensures storage. Ensures self underscore path method ensures storage folder is available and prepares the file name to be used by the assessment object. Okay, by the methods class. Let's have it this way. Okay, so let's see how this is going to work. So we're going to be using os.makeDirs, a function in the OS module that we learned about. We said that this function is going to create a directory if the directory doesn't exist, or it's just going to remain silent if it exists. But of course, we know that the second argument has to be exists underscore OK. So os.makeDirs, remember that at the top, we imported the OS module. That is why we can use it here. So the files we will be creating, the names of these files will be based on the exam names that have been submitted, the test names that have been submitted. So that's what we're going to use. We're now also going to use the os.get current working directory function to get the current working directory. We're going to join these parts. os.path.join. Path.join. All right. Sorry. So the parts we're joining will be the current working directory and then assessment. So assessment is a folder inside of where the test files will be stored. So we'll get os.get current working directory. That's the first path. We'll be joining to assessment, which is the second path. All right, then we place this os.path.exists. This is absolutely exists underscore OK. Now the next thing we want to do is try to create the folder. We've already tried that. That's the line we just wrote. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get the file that we will be working with. So we define a variable called file name and os.path, the join. We're going to be joining, the path together. This time around, it's going to involve the name of the file. This is the name of the file that we either are going to create or we either are going to access. So os.path.join, os.get current working directory again, assessment, and then finally, we said that the names of our files will be the names of the tests, the names of the tests. So we need to be able to plug the attribute test underscore name here. And that means we'll work with a formatted string, and then it's self dot test underscore name. And then we also need to add the extension .json. So this is what is going to happen. And then this function is going, sorry, this method, it's a method because it's inside of a class. This method is going to return the file name so it can be used by other methods. All right, so we've been able to do that. The next thing we want to do is come into the create assessment method and write a code that helps us create assessment. We'll add a little bit of docstring that says the assessment name is used to create a JSON file. Okay, the assessment name is used to create a JSON file that will hold the exam details like creator name, holds the creator name, duration, test name, etc. All right, so what we're going to do right here is we're going to check if we're going to check okay, I think I'm going to ignore this first part. Let's go straight to the path that allows us to create an assessment or a test first. We're going to return to that much later. So we define a variable called file name inside of this method, and then we call the set path method self.set. Sorry, there's a small error here. This should not be in the uppercase. Yes, self.set path. Now we said the self.set path method is going to return the file name. So we get the file name here. And then again, we're going to check if this path exists. We use os dot path that exists, file name. It's going to be an if statement, sorry. If the path exists, it means the exam or the assessment has already been created. So we send a message to the user saying this assessment has already been created. This assessment has already been created. Something else has to be done. So we break the line. You can use update features to update it, or to add more questions. Okay, I think we should just leave it at this to update it. All right, so if the path already exists, we are trying to create an exam. We need to check if that exam had been created before. So if that path exists, it means the exam had been created, and then we cannot create it again. Now, else, if that path doesn't exist, that's what it means. We can now open the file, go back to our with open. This time around, we want to write into the file. We are just creating the file, and we're going to write in it. So with open, the mode is going to be write. That's F. And then it's a JSON file. So what we want to do is to dump something inside. So we say JSON, the dump, JSON the dump, self the assessment. You remember that here We define this attribute called self.assessment, and inside of self.assessment, we have the test name, we have the test code, we have the creator's name, the duration, the password, and then the questions, which actually is an empty list. So we have prepared our data to be stored already inside of the JSON file, and then the file handle, and then indent is going to be 4. And once you're done with this, we can now print a message for the users to see, just to get some feedback to the user. Say, test successfully created. Test successfully created. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some other kind of message. Use the other features. Let's say use, going to add this as well. The other features. Use the other features to update it. All right, so this is the part that allows us to create a test or create an assessment. All right, next thing we want to do is, we want to add other methods that will do other things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to also write another method that allows the test object to verify that the user exists. For example, if the user wants to access an already created exam, we need to make sure that the user is the right user. So we're going to write a method that authenticates this user. And that method is called auth underscore user, auth underscore user. So this method is going to also get the file name from the set underscore path method we talked about. Remember, we talked about creating reusable components that we can use over and over again in our program. Now we're getting to use the set underscore path method again. So file name equals set underscore path. It's going to return the file path, and then we check if the file exists. If os dot path dot exists, that exists, file name. So what do we say? We don't say anything. We want to be able to confirm whether the person who's trying to access this file has the clearance to do that. So we need to open the file, get the password from it, get the username and other details, and then verify if this person has access. So if the file exists, we say with open again. This time around, we're going to be reading from the file. We're not writing into the file, so the mode is going to be R, SF. Then we load the data from the file. Data equals JSON.load. This is a different function. Handle F. All right. And then we're going to define a variable called keycode. We'll define a variable called keycode. And inside of this variable called keycode, we're going to store the password that is inside of the file. So we say data, it's a dictionary. So the only way we access, this from the dictionary is to use the key values. So we can use this method called get password. It gets the password stored inside of the file. And then we also want to confirm who the owner is. So this is going to be data that get creator. That's the key we used to save the owner of the file or the owner of the exam. And then we define another variable here called access. It's going to be access is going to be self.password. That's the password that has been provided by the user who wants to gain access. We're going to compare this password with what we have inside of the file. So that's how we get the access. And then we also get the questions. Questions will be equal to data get questions. We need to remember that the questions stored is a list. And after we've been able to do that, we can now send a return value. We return a list, we return access, and then we return, so yeah, we return a list of three things. We return access, we return data, and we return the name of the file. We will be using this, in other parts of the program. So this is what we have. This is going to help us in the add question method. Now, once we confirm that the user has access or has clearance to work with the file, we can now, determine how questions can be added. So we have add underscore question, add underscore question. So the first thing we want to do is we want to confirm access. So we define these variables: access, data, file name equals self dot auth underscore user. All right, good. And then we get our questions. Questions equals data get questions. Then we print details regarding the user's access. And we say, we're going to break the line. To do that, we say user access for the user who's trying to gain access. Then we do this access as well. Okay, I think we can actually do it outside. All right, so once we do that, we now check if access is true or access is false. If access is true, we just simply print a message to the user telling him or her that the questions can now be added. So we simply say, you can now add questions to add question to your questions. Let's leave it at that. Okay, good. And then the next thing we want to do, we want to prepare the question. So we define a variable called question. It's going to be a dictionary object. Yes, dictionary objects are very, very important when we work with JSON files. And then we begin to define the key and the value pairs. Question, yes, question is going to be typed. So we use the input function here and say add question here. Now we also want options to be provided. So we say options, we define an options item key value pair and say input. You can actually modify how you collect your options. Add options separated by semicolons. Good. All right, the next is the correct answer has to be provided. Answer input correct answer. All right, so this is the question objects that we will prepare to get stored inside of our exam, the assessment that we've created. So now we're going to open the file with open. Now this is the reason we actually returned the file name from the authentication from the auth underscore user method so that we can use that file name to we can open the file and process the file. All right, the mode is write. It's F because we want to write into the file. Questions dot append. Now questions is actually referring to the list inside of the file. So we can append our new question to that list. Questions is append question. Then we set data questions. We set the questions item, or we set the questions key, the value of the questions key inside of the file to the current questions we just created. I hope this is not going to get a little bit clumsy and difficult to understand. And then we use JSON.dump. We're placing the data back inside. JSON.dump data, the file handler indent is going to be 4. Okay. Now, remember there is an if statement there. That's if access has been granted. We can do all of that once access has been granted. What if access is not granted? The else statement is going to handle what happens if access is not granted. We're simply going to print a message and send to the user. So we're simply going to say, sorry, check your details. And then we're going to issue a warning. If this continues, we will restrict you from accessing any of okay, let's break the line here. The features on this platform. Okay, so we're going to stop this here. I'm going to stop this here. All the other methods you love to work with, you have to define them yourself and see that they work. Now, I think we're ready to go. Okay, there's something else we've not done. At the top of the create assessment method, there's something we need to add for when questions are to be updated, questions are to be added. So we're going to run a check, create a variable called check underscore data. We want to check if all the pieces of data are ready. So we're going to use a list comprehension to do this. Return false, yes. For field in self.assessment, if self.assessment field is equal to none. All right. And then we check if check data. All right, sorry, if false in check data, then we're going to do something else. If false in check data, we won't be creating exams if false is in check data. So this is the point where we can actually now call the add question method. We can now say self.add question, and then that method will run. Then it will do what we need it to do. Return, So I think it's time we tested this application. Right here, we can now uncomment this line and see that it runs. All right, I hope we won't have errors. So we do this, test manager, it says create assessment. Oh, sorry, I need to cancel this. Now we need to complete this part of the code where we now invoke the class, where we call the class. So right here, after we collect this detail, we say if creator and we want to ensure that data has been provided for creator and duration and password, and duration, password. Then we can say exam is equal to assessment, and then provide the data that the assessment class will work with. Creator, test name, duration, test code, password, test code, and then password. All right, so once we do this, our function is ready to run. This is going to be repeated for when we want to add questions. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. But this time around, the data we want to work with, we have to do with the creator, the test name, and the password. The creator, the test name, and the password. All right. And then we're going to provide non-values for duration and the test code, because we are not just creating the exams. Non. And that's why we actually have this piece of code here that says if the value of the field is none, then we add false to this, and then we can use this to determine that the user actually wants to add questions, not create a test. All right, I think we can run the script now. Good. So first, let's create an assessment. We type 0, exam creator name, I'm going to say devlabber. The test name, I'm going to say coding underscore 001, duration 45 minutes, test code 001, password Devishire. All right, it says test successfully created. Use the other features to update it. So what we're simply going to do to check if this test has been created is to go straight inside of the folder where we expect this test to be. So we're going to click on this assessment, the folder. Yes, we have an assessments folder, and this is where the test we create will come into. So this is the test we've just created. You can see all the details of the creator are here. We have the test name, coding underscore 001, test underscore code 001, creator is devlabber, the duration is 45, and then the questions is an empty list. So the next thing we're going to do is update or send questions. We're going to add questions. This time around, the option we choose will be 1. It says creator name, devlabber, test name is coding underscore 001, sorry, password dev. Okay, I'm going to do this for the password, and then we see what it tells us. It says user access for devlabber false. Sorry, check your details. If this continues, we will restrict you from accessing any of the features on this platform. So there's a small security feature that protects your exams if you created them. This time around, I'm going to provide the correct data, the correct details, test name, coding underscore 001, password, it's Devishire. All right, user access for devlabber is true. You can now add a question to your questions. Add question here. So my question is going to be, what is the meaning of the H in HTML? All right, add options separated by semicolons. So I could say hypo, hyper, hype, and hippo. The correct answer has to also be provided, so it's going to be hyper. All right. So what we need to do is just go to the file to check. You can see now that a question object has been added to the questions list. The question is there, the options are there, and then the answer is there. Okay, I think there's something that should be adjusted. Okay, not necessarily. I think this is still okay for options. We can actually make it a list. It's okay if it's a string. You can always use a string method to extract the different item inside of the options. So this is the project example illustration. You were meant to create something like this, a system that you can use to add data. You can create objects, add data, delete data, and monitor who does what and when it is done. So you can practice, you can take this piece of code, add some to it, add more methods that help you do other things. You can add methods that help you change the creator name, add methods that change the duration, and so many things you can practice on. I wish you all the best as you try to get things right.